Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you're all doing well this fine Thursday. Well, it's been a while since I've been able to do a live stream and put my Delphi new court filings down there on the bottom banner. Well, what we got late yesterday, it was like yesterday evening my time. The state of Indiana have responded to the appellant brief that Richard Allen has submitted to the appeals court. So we're going to read it in full. I'm going to do this in two parts because I know I'm going to get angry. So I'm going to chill. So I'm going to do a part one today and a part two tomorrow. And I know this is a really bad time for most people who watch my channel, but I wanted to do this bright and early so I could have the rest of the day to decompress. I did start watching Criminality's live stream last night. She's read through this, but I've not got to the end because I fell asleep. So you may have already seen someone read this through, but I like to read these court filings, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it. But it's just gone 9:30 a.m. here in the UK, so it's going to be middle of the night for most people who watch my channel. It's a good time for Europe. It's a good time for those down under, but not so much for the 70% of people who are from America or Canada. So we will endeavour to carry on, and it's okay. People can watch it on the replay. Let's just say a couple of hellos before we get going on it. We got Flower Girl, To Arctic Wolves, Show Compassion, Kelly. And we've got V. We've got Paper Chaser, Dawn, Australia Lingo. Oh, sorry, Australian. Right, I don't know. I don't know. Scott has thoughts. We got Saul. We got Jen. Who else? We got Mandy, Reach, Lily. Oh no, is it bad news? Well, it's a predictable response. Let's just put it that way. It's a predictable response. Listen, I don't think this appeal is going to be successful. I'm very pessimistic because, well, it's just a Delphi case. So it's infuriating. From what I heard from Criminality's live stream last night, it's absolutely infuriating. But I haven't got to the end, so it may get better. But it's certainly not good news. Let's put it that way. Karen. Oh, good time for South Africa too. Yeah, I guess it will be, yeah. Gutter. Shelley. All right, I'm down the bottom now. Okay, without further ado, let's get going. I am waiting for my other computer to boot up because I haven't had it on for so long. Oh, it's just coming on now. It's doing updates and all sorts of crap. So it's basically so I can read and watch the chat on my other computer. But it's nearly booting up now. Hey, Mandy, member for many months. 40 months. 40 months. Nearly 3.5 years. All right, just let me put my other computer on. It's letting me log in now. Okay. Takes computers a minute to start, isn't it? When they do updates and stuff. But we're all sorted now. Just so I can watch the chat. All right, we're all done. We're all done. Okay, without further ado, let's get into this. So this is for Richard Allen's appeal. Unexpected live. It is an unexpected live. Well, it's funny, actually, that in the live stream that I did the other day, the Q&A, one of the questions was, any news on Rick Allen? And there wasn't any. There hasn't been any since the defense put in the appeal. the appeal brief. That was back in December. Now, the state of Indiana requested an extension because they had a lot to say, and that was granted. So this has just come in late yesterday, my time. So, yeah, it's quite, what's the word? Serendipitous, maybe? That this came in just a couple of days after somebody asked me the question. But yeah, it is unexpected. Because I haven't been kind of keeping, you know, a mental note of how long these things are taking. I mean, appeals take forever. But anyway, so this is Court of Appeals in Indiana. Richard Allen is the appellant, and the state of Indiana is the appellee, the plaintiff. So the appeals court, it's a whole set of new names. You know, this is not written by Nick McClelland because he's a trial prosecutor. These people are from the Attorney General's office. So we've got Theodore Rakita. I think his name has come up. His name has come up before. Ellen Marlinda, Jody Stein, the Office for Indiana Attorney General. Okay, so we can skip a few pages because we've got all these like introductory things. They're all the legal cases that are in here. So we can skip quite a few pages. Now, this is 94 pages total, but we're going to start reading from here. So, statement of the issues. 1. Whether the admission of evidence seized from Allen's home constituted fundamental error. Whether the trial court properly admitted Allen's confessions. 3. Whether the trial court properly excluded and omitted various pieces of evidence. And 4. Whether the trial court properly denied Allen's motions to correct error. So those are the 4 prongs from which Richard Allen is appealing. So that's what we've got to bear in mind. And if you don't remember the actual appeal brief, way back when they released it, I did do a read through of that as well. So I guess you could go and re-listen, or you could just go and find the document and reread it yourself. Okay, statement of the case. So this is all now stating what happened on the afternoon of February 13th, 2017 as fact. It's stating it as fact because, right, Rick Allen has been convicted in a court of law, so they can state this as fact, even if it isn't. You know, they can say, well, a jury of Richard Allen's peers said that he was guilty, and these were the facts that we presented at trial. Therefore, this is fact. Legally, unless his appeal is successful, this becomes legal fact, even though it's not actual fact. But that's just my opinion, obviously. Okay. On October 28th, 2022, the state charged Richard Allen with 2 counts of felony murder. The information was amended on March 22nd, 2024 to add 2 counts of murder. So in Indiana, murder and felony murder are 2 separate charges. Following a jury trial between October 14th and November 11th, 2024, the jury found Allen guilty as charged. On December 20th, 2024, the trial court vacated the felony murder convictions and imposed consecutive 65-year sentences on Allen's 2 murder convictions. So 130 years. So he's spending the rest of his life in prison and then some. Allen filed a motion to correct error on January 20th, 2025, to which the state timely responded. On February 14th, 2025, the trial court denied the motion. Alan filed his notice of appeal on March 11th, 2025. Statement of facts. Okay. Prepare to get mad if you're of the belief that Rick Allen is factually innocent. Legally, he's now guilty. Factually, however, this is what we're dealing with. Statement of the facts. On the afternoon of Monday, February 13th, 2017, Alan killed 14-year-old Libby and 13-year-old Abby in a remote wooded area north of the Monon High Bridge Trail in Delphi. The Monon High Bridge Trail spans from Freedom Bridge over the Hoosier Heartland Highway on the northwest side and ends at the Monon High Bridge to the southeast. The High Bridge is an abandoned, dilapidated railroad track that spans 852 feet and is 65 feet high above Deer Creek. So when you cross that bridge, when it was all rickety and like it was in 2017, you literally took your life in your hands. But a lot of young people, apparently, a lot of old people walked that bridge at the time. You can't do it now. Part of the bridge has been made safe, I guess, with like railings, so you can walk part the way across. But in 2017, you could walk all the way across. Wooden platforms extending out from the sides of the track occur periodically along the bridge. The first platform was approximately 50 feet out from the start of the bridge. The trail dead ends at the far end of the bridge, where both sides slope sharply downhill. That's not strictly true. It becomes private property, but you could still walk through without going down the hill. So there is a trail that you can take through the woods, which runs by Brad Weber's house. So it's not strictly true that you can't carry on. You can carry on, you'd just be trespassing. Okay. Parking to access the trail is located both near Freedom Bridge and farther east at the side entrance on County Road 300 North, known as the Mears entrance. Okay. It takes about 10 minutes to walk the trail from bridge to bridge. I would think it takes a bit longer than that, but I've never walked it, so I don't know. On February 13th, 2017, Delphi schools were closed and the weather was unseasonably warm. Delphi High School sophomores Brianne Wilbur and Rayleigh Voorhees, along with Voorhees' two younger sisters, arrived at the Monon High Bridge Trail around 12:25. By 12:43, the group had walked from Freedom Bridge to High Bridge. Alan, who lived in Delphi and was familiar with the area, also went to the trail that afternoon. Surveillance video captured Alan's black 2016 Ford Focus driving westbound on County Road 300 North towards the Freedom Bridge side at 1:27 p.m. So again, this is stated as fact because this was what presented at the trial, and a jury found him guilty. It was actually the judge that found him guilty. But the judge found him guilty before a trial had even commenced. And it's part of the reason why we're here. But a jury found him guilty, therefore they can state this as fact, even if it's not factual. So, yes, we do have the surveillance videos showing a dark-coloured vehicle pass by the Hoosier Harvey store, which is the building where the camera was on, but it's far away, and I don't know that you could say that that is a Ford Focus. I don't know that you could say that, but that's what they're saying. He parked at the old CPS building and walked onto the trail. On their return, as they neared Freedom Bridge about 1:30 p.m., the group of girls, so this is Brianne and Rayleigh, etc., encountered Alan as he walked in the opposite direction towards High Bridge. Alan noticed the girls as he walked past them without speaking. Neither Voorhees nor Wilbur saw another man on the trail who looked like him. But the thing is, as we've talked about so many times. The first thing you would notice about Rick Allen is his size. For a guy, he's very short, like 5'4", 5'5" at the, on a really good day. Very small, but none of these girls said in their description of this man that he was a short guy. In fact, one of them said he was taller than her and she was 5'7". So he's at least 5'7", if not taller, because she said he's taller than me. So we're looking for an average size guy, not a short guy. So every one of them gave a different description of what this guy was wearing, which isn't unusual, honestly. But the first thing they would have noted, the obvious thing they would have noticed, is that he was short for a guy. All of them should have noticed that, but they didn't mention that, which concerns me. That they didn't see Rick Allen, they saw someone else. After reaching Highbridge, Allen walked out to the first platform. Betsy Blair also went to the trail that afternoon to walk. Surveillance video showed her car driving eastbound on County Road 300 North at 1:46 p.m. She parked at the Mears entrance and entered the trail there. Just before 1:49 p.m., Libby's older sister, Kelsey, dropped Libby and Abby off at the Mears entrance of the trail. Both girls were familiar with the trail. Libby's dad, Derek, planned to pick them up later that afternoon. As the two walked towards Highbridge, Libby sent a Snapchat to Wilbur asking if she was still at the High Bridge. Wilbur responded that they had left about 10 minutes earlier. When Blair reached Highbridge around 2 p.m., she saw a man, now known to be Allen, standing on the first platform of the bridge. So this is the young guy in his 20s with dark poofy hair. That was her description. But the state conveniently have morphed this young guy with dark poofy hair into Richard Allen, who is not young in his 20s. He was in his mid-40s at the time, but he didn't look young. He looked like his age. He certainly didn't have dark poofy hair. And again, maybe from 50 feet away, maybe she wouldn't necessarily have noticed his height. I think height's a little bit more difficult to assess if you're a distance away. But certainly the description she gave was not of Richard Allen. And the sketch that she said was 10 out of 10, which is the young bridge guy sketch, looks nothing like Richard Allen. As Blair circled back to the Mears entrance, she passed Libby and Abby as they walked towards the High Bridge. Blair did not see anyone else on the trail. Perhaps because Richard Allen had already left by then. Who knows? Libby and Abby proceeded onto High Bridge and walked towards the southeast end. Libby took a photo of Abby on the bridge at 2:07, although that was never found on Libby's phone. So where that came from, who knows? At 2:13 p.m., Libby took a 43-second video from the far end of the bridge, showing Abby cautiously walking towards Libby and a man, initially denominated Bridge Guy by police, now known to be Allen, following behind her. This is infuriating. This is absolutely infuriating. Bridge Guy wore a blue jacket, blue jeans, a brown hat or hood on his head, and sneakers or boots. The audio captured the following. Abby, is he right there? Is he right there? Abby, don't leave me up here. Libby, see, this is the path. Libby, whispering, that be a gun. They said that is a gun, but that be a gun was what they said at trial. Libby, there's no path here. We have to go down here. Allen, guys. Libby high, Allen down the hill. There is no mention of gun No mention of gun at all in what Libby said. And the audio was very bad. You couldn't really hear what Abby was saying. So that's just fabricated nonsense, in my opinion. It was fabricated nonsense at trial. It's fabricated nonsense now, in my opinion. 7 seconds after the video ended, either Libby or Abby tried unsuccessfully to biometrically unlock the cell phone. Libby's Apple Health captured the girls' movements. And I did videos, loads of them, at the time when the trial was going on, when all this information was coming out about Libby's phone and the timeline, and how it does not make sense. The Apple Health app that was recorded on Libby's phone does not make sense. It absolutely 100% does not make sense in relation to how the state think these murders happened. So I've got loads of videos on that if you want to just go back a few months to when the trial happened. Okay, Alan brought the girls down the steep incline towards Deer Creek, where he later confessed he intended to rape them. Between High Bridge and Deer Creek is a single dirt driveway at the end of County Road 365 West that led to the Webber property. Alan saw a van, Brad Webber, driving home from work along that driveway, which scared him and changed his plans. Well, Brad Webber's van did not pass by until at least 2:45. We know this because his van is caught in the distance via a camera at another house. I think is it the Sandifers house, perhaps? I can't remember quite rightly now. But it's captured at 2:45. So it would take another couple of minutes to get from where that was captured to his house. And then Brad Webber's phone connected to the nearest cell tower at 2:50. So that all kind of marries together that he got to his house just before 2:50. He takes out his phone and his phone sends a ping to the tower. Or the tower pings his phone, whatever, at 2:50. So that all makes sense. So even if the time on the camera is wrong, we still have that time of 2:50 when we know Brad Webber had got to his house, because that was the first time his phone pinged on the tower. Okay. Alan ordered the girls to cross the 100-foot wide creek. At some point, Alan ordered the girls to undress, and various pieces of the girls' clothing were discarded in the creek. Libby's tie-dyed shirt and camisole, one of Libby's Nike tennis shoes, Abby's jeans and underwear, together but turned inside out, Abby's grey hooded sweatshirt and a sock. Alan took the girls north of the steep creek bed to a secluded valley area. It's not a valley. That was difficult to see from the creek. It's not at all. It's a flat, it's part of the floodplain. It's virtually flat. It's not a valley. You wouldn't be able to see it from the top of the hill because of the trees, but you could absolutely see it from the creek, and you could probably see it from the other side of the creek. It's not in a valley. Dear God. Dear God. Dear God. Libby was naked while Abby was clothed partially in her own clothing, but wearing Libby's wet jeans and Libby's sweatshirt. Abby's tennis shoes were wet and dirty, consistent with the creek bottom. Alan cut both girls' necks with a box cutter. Abby sustained one partial transection of her left exterior jugular vein, so she would have bled out slowly. Libby sustained at least 3 separate injuries, a partial transection of her right common carotid artery, so she would have pumped blood. That would have been quick, very quick. The carotid artery pumps blood. And complete transections of both her left common artery and her exterior jugular vein. Alan placed tree branches and sticks on their bodies. Libby's cell phone registered no movement after 2:32 p.m. Okay. At 3:11 p.m., Libby was not answering phone calls from her father. Derek walked to the Freedom Bridge trailhead where he encountered Dave McCain, coming from the Highbridge side. McCain had not seen the 2 girls. Derek alerted family that the girls were not at the trailhead and that Libby was not answering her phone. Family quickly assembled and searched the Morning Highbridge Trail and in Delphi. As he left the scene, Alan kept off the trail to avoid being seen. Okay. At about 4 p.m., Sarah Carbo, the absolute liar, saw a man, now known to be Alan, walking along the north side of County Road 300 North as she was driving eastbound. At the trial, she said she was driving 30 miles an hour, but was able to get a really good look at this man for about 30 seconds. So make those physics work out. Work out how she managed to travel at 30 miles per hour past a man walking along the road, but was able to eyeball him and get a really good view of him for at least 30 seconds. The math ain't mathing there, I'm sorry. The math ain't mathing. He was hunched forward with his hands in his pockets, much like on Libby's video. She noticed he was covered in mud and had fresh blood spatters on his light-coloured jeans. Dear God. Around 5 p.m., law enforcement and Abby's mother were notified that the girls were missing. Search teams scoured the trail areas near the High Bridge until 2 a.m, when the search was called off for the night. Law enforcement also checked in with Brad Webber, who allowed a deputy to look round his property for the girls. The search resumed the next morning, February 14th. About noon, searchers along the south side of Deer Creek found some of the girls' clothing tangled in branches in the water. Searchers were directed to the north side of the creek. Access was made by going down the steep hill that ran south of the cemetery on County Road 300 North. The girls' bodies were discovered behind mature trees north of the creek. Blood pooling on the ground, blood transfer patterns and DNA testing indicated that Libby's injuries were inflicted next to a small tree to the west of the girls' bodies. After touching the tree with her bloody hand and her arm and creating an inverted L, not an F, an inverted L, shaping blood, Libby walked towards Abby and sat or kneeled on the ground where she either fell unconscious or died in a large pool of blood. Alan then dragged Libby's body by her left arm to her final resting place behind a large tree. So Libby was 5'4" and weighed 200 pounds. Richard Allen was also 5'4". So how did he manage to pull Libby along for a number of feet with just one arm? I mean, is he does he have like super strength? You know, like he's a small guy, but he's got super strength. Bear in mind, Rick Allen at the time was a middle-aged man, somewhat overweight, and had a heart condition. So, don't know how he managed it, but that's what the prosecutors here want us all to believe. Although some of the blood flow on Abby's face suggested her head had been moved or turned, she was injured and died where she was found. Abby was already clothed when the fatal injury was inflicted. So he's killed he's killed Libby, and then Abby redresses Abby and then kills her. Okay. Neither girl showed defensive wounds or outward signs of sexual assault. A small amount of male DNA, perhaps simply from environmental factors, were detected in the external genital swabs of both Abby and Libby, and from fingernail scrapings from both girls, but it was an insufficient amount of DNA for analysis. Libby's cell phone and her other tennis shoe were discovered underneath Abby's body. The video of their kidnapping was found on the phone. The phone had condensation and moisture on the screen, had connected on and off from the cell tower all afternoon on the 13th, but lost cell tower connection between 5:45 p.m. on the 13th and 4:33 a.m. on the 14th, when it momentarily reconnected before it powered off. An unfired Winchester brand 40 caliber cartridge was found in the leaves between the girls' bodies. Later ballistic testing showed that cartridge to have been cycled through Allen's Sig Sauer model P226 40 caliber handgun, even though Melissa Oberg, the supposed state specialist, could not get those markings that were found on that casing to happen when she was just expelling the round without firing it. She had to fire several rounds. So we're not comparing apples with apples here. We're completely comparing apples with bananas. That the unfired round that was found at the crime scene and the fired rounds from McAllen's gun, that was what she used to make her comparison. Completely different mechanisms, and I don't think that should have been allowed as testimony. Different mechanisms, but hey, that's what happened. On February 14th, 2017, Voorhees, Wilbur and Blair told police about seeing a man on the trail platform, so the trail or platform, the previous afternoon. And after seeing the bridge guy photograph from Libby's phone that was released to the media, they immediately identified bridge guy as the man they had seen that day. Okay, well, not so much Betsy Blair, because she, in her interview, said that it was a young guy with dark poofy hair. And the sketch that she sat with a police sketch artist just days after the murders depicted a young man with poofy hair. That wasn't released to the public for 2 years. It was only in April 2019 when that image was released to the public. Nothing like Richard Allen. Carbo also came forward a few weeks after seeing the picture of Bridge Guy and identified him as the muddy and bloody man she had seen on the road on February 13th. Why did it take her several weeks to come forward? And I don't think she did come forward. I think she got stopped. I think they were stopping people. I can't remember exactly now from the trial, but anyway, why did it take her weeks to speak up? On February 16th, 2017, Allen reported to police that he went to the trail on February 13th between 1:30 and 3:30. We don't know what he said. We don't know what he said to Dan Dullard on the 16th of February. Why? Because Dan's notes were very brief and he couldn't find the recording that he took of that interview. If we had a recording of that interview, we would be able to confirm whether or not Richard Allen said 1:30 to 3:30 in that initial interview. As it stands, we have only Dan Dullard's word as to what time Rick Allen said. So I'm not going to take that as proof that Rick Allen was there during the time of the murders. I'm not taking that as proof because there is no proof. Dan Dullard's word, I'm sorry, is not good enough for me. It wasn't recorded, or at least he couldn't find the recording, therefore null and void, in my opinion. But if Rick Allen had never come forward to say that he was on the trails that day, they'd have never, ever got to him. They'd have never got to him. There's no evidence linking him to that crime, to them victims at all whatsoever. They'd have never got to him. So, if you go for a walk and then you find out that a murder has taken place in the vicinity of where you walked, never go forward to the police, especially if you're in the state of Indiana, as you never know what might happen years down the line. So it walked past a group of 3 girls as he entered the trail near Freedom Bridge and walked to High Bridge. Well, that's a bit confusing because there was actually 4 girls, not 3. Yeah, that presser where they introduced the new sketch was really bizarre. It was the April 2019. Yeah, that presser. I remember watching that presser, and then I just thought to myself, they have no clue. This crime will never be solved. They're now giving us a sketch of a person who's completely different than the sketch that they've been putting out there for the last 2 years. They have no idea. This is really strange. And I stopped following the case. I'd been following the case up to that point. Obviously, this channel didn't exist then, but I've been following the case up to that point, and then I just stopped following it. I stopped looking for any updates or anything. And then it was only when Rick Allen was arrested that I started following the case again. I kind of washed my hands of it. I was like, this is ridiculous. This is bizarre. Yeah, absolutely. It's just strange. Anyhow, there was 4 girls, not 3. So Rick Allen, I don't know, missed one. Maybe one had gone for a pee in the bushes. Who knows? Who knows? Allen said he saw no one else on the trail. Allen's report was misfiled under Richard Allen Whiteman and mistakenly marked cleared. In September 2022, Allen's report was discovered in a box. Kathy Shank doing her due diligence, going through all of the old boxes. They were looking, look, no one can convince me any different. They were looking for a target. All the stuff, all the things that they'd put into Kegan Kline and Tony Kline had all fallen through. They needed to get they needed to get an arrest. They needed to pretend to the public that the crime had been solved. Why? Because in November of 2022 was the sheriff's election. Tobe Leesenby was the sheriff at the time. He was stepping down, and what's his face? Tony Liggett was going for the sheriff's job. So what they needed was something big to make Tony Liggett look great, to make Tony Liggett great again, because he hadn't been doing too well in the debates that he'd been having with his competitor. He wasn't doing too well, so he needed to ensure that he'd get elected. Well, solving the Delphi case would be perfect. You know, that had been rumbling on for the last 5 years. That would be perfect, given that Tony Liggett was the lead investigator on that case. So what better person to have as your sheriff? No one will convince me otherwise that is what happened. Kathy Shank was going through all the old boxes and files to find someone suitable. And Richard Allen fit the bill. And it all started to unravel for Richard from that day. On October 13th, 2022, Allen met with Detective Tony Liggett and investigator Stephen Mullin. Wasn't Stephen Mullin the police chief at that time? Wasn't he? Maybe he wasn't. He was the police chief of Delphi at the time of the murders. I don't know whether. Anyway. Allen confirmed that he walked to High Bridge on February 13th, saw 3 girls, 1 older and 2 similar-looking younger ones. who were possibly sisters, as he entered the trailhead. So one older one and two younger ones. Well, where's the other older one then? Because there was two older ones and two younger ones. So where's the second older one? He then went out to the first platform on High Bridge to watch the fish. Alan now claims that he was on the trail earlier from 12 to 1:30. We'll never know what he said in 2017 because Dan Dullard, the Dullard that he is, did not record that interview, or at least if he did, he now can't find it. Unsurprising. He said he probably was driving his 2016 black Ford Focus. Alan said he did not see anyone else on the trail that day, specifically not Bridge Guy. Alan said he was probably wearing a dark Carhartt jacket with a hood, blue jeans, and either tennis shoes or work boots, and had a hat with him. He indicated that he might still have his cell phone from 2017. When confronted with the picture of Bridge Guy, Alan stated that if that was taken with the girl's phone, there's no way it could be me. Why? Because he wasn't there at the bridge at that time. Based on witness information and Alan's statements, a search warrant was obtained to search Alan's house. Officers recovered Alan's Sig Sauer P226 40 caliber handgun, Blazer 40 caliber ammunition, one unfired Winchester brand 40 caliber cartridge in a keepsake box, a blue Carhartt jacket, several knives and box cutters. Oh, so if you happen to have a blue Carhartt style coat, you happen to have any knives or box cutters in your house, well, just be very wary. You know, don't go declaring yourself a witness in any case, because good God, all of that incriminating evidence. Oh my God. Oh my God. And photos showing Alan on the High Bridge in 2016. Oh, good grief. Well, that means he absolutely is the killer. How many hundreds of other people went walking at that High Bridge? Loads of them. But all of these things make Richard Allen the guy. Good God. Allen still owned his 2016 black Ford Focus. Wouldn't you think he would have got rid of his car? Wouldn't you think he would have got rid of the gun? Wouldn't you think they would have got rid of any knives that look similar to the knife he used? Do you think? It doesn't take a master criminal to work those things out. But no, he still had all of those things. He still had his car. He still had his coat. Actually, Kathy Allen said the coat that they said was the coat he'd only bought 2 years previous. So, you know, approximately 2020. So he didn't have it in 2017. But obviously that's just Kathy Allen's words. It's a shame they couldn't provide a receipt for that coat. That would have been good. Although Allen had 12 other cell phones in the master bedroom closet, Allen's cell phone from 2017 was not found. Oh, well, maybe it broke and he threw it away, or maybe he traded that one in. I don't know. Kathy said that she maybe traded some phones in. We don't know. But given that they're making a point of this 2017 phone not being found, well, again, why does he still have the same car and why does he still have the same gun? Why does he still have any box cutters that might be, I don't know, thought to be the murder weapon? Why? You're making a big deal about the phone. Why not make an equally big deal about all the items that he kept? Dear God. Allen told ISP Lieutenant Jerry Holman more than once during the search, it's over. Yeah, He was like, my reputation. You're like, you've basically shattered my reputation in the local community. Oh, and another thing, he continued to work at CVS for the whole time. So he had a forward-facing job, right? Any number of people could have gone in that CVS store in Delphi. Remember, Delphi is only a small town with like 3,000 people. And there was pictures of Bridge Guy everywhere. And no one, absolutely no one sent a tip into the cops saying the guy at CVS looks awful lot like Bridge Guy. Not one. Not one. The only tip that came in regarding Richard Allen was from Richard Allen himself, saying, yes, I was on the trails that day. I saw 3 girls and I didn't see anyone else. That was it. That was all. So why did no one in those 5 years put 2 and 2 together and say, that guy working at CVS looks a lot like the pictures of Bridge Guy that the cops have been circulating since February 2017? Damn. Allen gave a second interview on October 26, 2022. Allen said he did not have his handgun with him on the trail on February 13, 2017, and denied loading it to anyone else. If he carried it, he would have had the handgun in a side holster and a round chamber. Allen had no explanation for how a cartridge cycled through his handgun could have ended up at the scene, and denied the possibility that any cartridge at the scene could have come from his gun. Why? Because it didn't. Allen was arrested. In early November, this is where it gets really infuriating, if that's not bad enough. In early November, following the filing of charges, the trial court ordered Allen to be transferred to the Department of Correction for safekeeping due to media and safety concerns. So what? The media is going to storm the county jail? Like, what are the media and what are the concerns? What are the concerns? I know that Carroll County Jail is only really small, but there's no other county jails in the vicinity that could house Richard Allen. Okay, all right. The Department of Corrections placed Allen at Westville Correctional Facility in a pod, cell A 1107, a single-man cell in a restrictive housing unit. The whole, basically. The 12-by-8 cell had a bed, a toilet, a sink, a slot in the door through which his meals could be served, and a narrow window for daylight. After Allen complained that scratches in the window made it hard to see out, DOC replaced the window. Oh, how good they were to him. How good they were to him. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. How good they were to him, so he could see daylight from out of his window. Allen was given showers, 3 per week. As if like showers now a luxury. Having a shower is now a luxury. Why are they even mentioning this? Out of cell recreation time 5 times per week. Three sets of clothing and weekly laundry service. He gets a complimentary laundry service. Yeah, Dave McCain was on the bridge. Yeah. There was loads of people out that afternoon. Loads of them. Books and puzzles. An electronic tablet he could use to communicate with family, listen to music, download movies, and play games. It's like a holiday camp. It's like, good God, we'd all want to go there if we could. Dear God. When his first tablet broke, Alan did not have to pay the usual fee for a replacement tablet. Alan was offered a television for his cell, but declined. Alan could dim the cell's overhead lights. Alan was granted in-person visits with his wife, which were generally not permitted for restricted housing convicts. Well, not for several months. He wasn't allowed to see Cassie for several months. In my opinion, he was allowed to see Cassie once he'd confessed. That's my opinion. Yeah, free drugs too. Free Aldol injections. Treating him like a king. Totally. Totally. Dear me. So, and when he met Cassie, when he was allowed to see Cassie, like, they weren't even allowed to get a drink from the machine. They weren't allowed drinks. And they were being videotaped by the guards. So, yeah, great. Alan had access to weekly chaplain visits upon request and received regular checks by medical staff. Well, they didn't try to stop him banging his head on the wall so that, you know, he had 2 massive black eyes. He looked like a raccoon. So I don't know what medical intervention he was getting, because how was that allowed to happen? You know, he's in this suicide cell, and how was he allowed to bang his head repeatedly against a wall and blacken both of his eyes? Although shackled while being transported outside his cell, Alan's shackles were removed during his sessions with Dr. Waller. Oh, the DOC psychologist, and his meetings with his wife and attorneys. Well, how good they were treating him. You don't have to be shackled when you're meeting with your own wife and your attorneys. Although placed in the same kind of physical environment as convicted offenders in that unit, Alan was treated better. Well, I don't know then how the regular convicts are treated, because if he was treated well, how did he lose a third of his body weight in about 4 months? Please tell me the secret to losing a third of your body weight in 4 months. How did he go from I think he was 200 and... I can't remember exactly, but around 200 pounds when he was arrested. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. I can't remember exactly. But he was 140 pounds in April of 2023. How did that happen? How did that happen? Yeah, it's like a holiday camp where you come back slimmer. It's like a health spa. I mean, it's practically a health spa. You've got to admit, you know, you lose weight, you get showers, you get to play on your tablet, you get to relax, you can dim your light, you can peer through the window and admire the scenery. Oh, it's brilliant, brilliant. Treated like a king. So I really don't know how convicts are treated. Alan was treated better, and the primary goal was to keep him safe from himself and the general population. Okay, keeping him safe from himself. Well, again, how was he allowed to eat his own shit? How was he allowed to repeatedly bang his head against a wall and have 2 massive black eyes? How did that happen if they were supposedly keeping him safe from himself? How does that happen? As a content creator, do you have a code or coupon for money off spa day there? Unfortunately not. I've obviously not been associating with the right people. You know, this is very special circumstances. You know, you got to be royalty to get this kind of treatment, and I'm just not important enough. The administrative and medical team met to discuss how to make Alan more comfortable. DOC policy restricted periods of solitary confinement to persons with serious mental illness to 30 days. But Alan's initial diagnosis of major depressive disorder and anxiety did not meet that definition of serious mental illness. I thought, I might be wrong on this, I thought it was anybody in DOC wasn't allowed to stay in solitary for more than 30 days. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but how on earth, once he started to go into psychosis, was he kept there? If that was their policy, as soon as he clicked over into serious mental illness, why was he not gotten out of there? Because he'd been there for longer than 30 days, or does the counter only stop ticking when you go into serious mental illness? So it doesn't matter how long you've been there previous. It doesn't matter that you've been there for 4 months. Once you get psychotic, you've got to be psychotic for 30 days and then you get moved. Is that what we're telling me? That's what they seem to be telling me here. Dear God. And also, that is not what they said initially. Initially, they said that day, the 30 days doesn't apply because that's convicted people, and Richard Allen had not been convicted. Therefore, the rule didn't apply. I'm pretty sure that that's what, somewhere along the line, that was said. Because he entered Westville on constant suicide watch. Hold on a minute. They've just previously said that he had no serious mental illness. But now in the very next paragraph, they're telling me that he came into Westville on suicide watch. So if you're suicidal, aren't you by definition classed as seriously mentally ill? Like, could you be suicidal and not have any mental problems whatsoever? That seems to be completely opposite to me. That's a complete oxymoron. How can you say he didn't suffer from serious mental illness, but yet he was on suicide watch? Dear God. Before he entered Westville on constant suicide watch with prior mental health diagnoses, the cell Alan was placed in was the suicide cell with 24-hour monitoring, and he was observed by suicide companions for months. So how can they say he was not seriously mentally ill if that's what they were doing with him? Like, put him on suicide watch, give him suicide companions who didn't stop him from repeatedly banging his head on the wall or eating his own shit. All of that was allowed. So what were they doing? Were they sleeping outside of his cell? Because they didn't seem to be doing anything good to stop him from harming himself. So he's in this suicide cell, be on camera, self-harming, and nobody tried to intervene. Nobody tried to, give him some, mental health support. No, they didn't. They allowed all that to happen. Oh, of course, he had Dr. Waller. I forgot about her for a minute. Alan met with Dr. Waller daily, usually in a nearby room with a metal grate partition between them, and otherwise at his cell door. Great therapy. Like, you chat to your therapist behind your cell door. I mean, it's hardly private, is it? You can hardly, open up in a therapeutic setting if you're standing at the opposite side of a cell door. The very most, all she could say is, are you all right? Are you feeling okay? And remember, he's got constant suicide companions who are listening to all of this. This is ridiculous. This is just ridiculous. Alan was offered the opportunity to meet with Dr. Waller out of his cell at least once a week. During a session in early November, Dr. Waller advised Alan not to talk about his case with anyone. Okay, don't talk about your case with anyone. Yay, paper chaser, member for 41 months. Richard Allen as LWP, but R. Williams eligible in 10 years. Oh, Russell Williams. Yeah, different country. Paper chaser. Completely different country. Russell Williams is in Canada. And Canada is very much like the UK, like really lax system. So Russell Williams was given 25 years before the opportunity for parole. So he's been in prison since 2010. So in 9 years, he will be eligible for parole. It doesn't mean to say he'll get parole, but he will be eligible for parole in 9 years' time. So 2035. So that's the reason. It's different country. All right. She did not ask him questions about it during their sessions. Oh, yeah, but she was a Delphi fangirl, and I think she's lying. By December 2022, Alan was removed from constant suicide watch and placed on close observation. Not sure he was. I think the suicide companions continued because, if you remember, in April of 2023, when he started the major psychosis and doing loads of confessions, they replaced the suicide companions with guards. So that's not true. Somewhere along the line, that's not true. Russell Williams is our great pride and joy. Yeah, he's an absolute monster. Yeah, if you don't know who Russell Williams is, I did a video about him the other day. Oh, dear God. He was observed every 15 minutes, and Alan met with Dr. Waller once a week. Alan did well in the first months of 2023. Did well, loving it, loving his life. Alan found Jesus and accepted God into his heart in late March 2023 and became increasingly concerned with religious matters. You know, prison religion, you know. In late March and early April, Alan began receiving his legal discovery, and he had a visit with his attorneys on April the 3rd or 4th. Why 3rd or 4th? Which is it? I mean, obviously it's inconsequential, but it's not paperwork that just has the date on it. Can we not just get things right here? And when exactly did he receive his legal discovery? I know there was some buffoonery that his discovery had not been given to him. I know his discovery had not been given to him on April 3rd or 4th, because one of the points that Baldwin and Rosie raised was that Rick Allen had not received his legal discovery in good time. So it must have been shortly after this that he received his discovery. But he was already showing signs of psychosis by that point. And by that point, he had already lost a third of his body weight because of this photo. Let me just see if I can find it. I want the one with the date on. Please hold. You know which photo I mean, but there's like the original that has got the date on it. And I don't know whether I've got it or not. Because the attorneys took this and released it. And it has the date on it. I've got several copies of the photo. I just don't know I've got the one with the date on it. I'm sure I have. Please hold. I've not gone mute. I'm just looking through a file. I'm sure I've got it, you know. I can't find it. But it's this photo. Hold on. You know what? As soon as I get off the live, like the next time I go into this folder, I'll find it straight away. No, it's one of them. This could be it. Yeah. Okay. This photo was taken when his attorneys visited in April. And this was taken on the 5th. I think that says 5th. So 4/5/2023. That was when it was filed. So it was possibly taken the day before when they visited, and it was filed on 4/5/2023. And this is Richard Allen at that time. So when they said that he was allowed to be unshackled when he met with his attorneys, well, honestly, that doesn't look like unshackled to me. He's got shackles. He's got a waistband like a chain, and then his hands are tied to this chain in this really odd, strange position, like he can't put his hands together. So he may not have had leg shackles on, but he certainly had cuffs, and then the cuffs are tied to his waist. Because this guy, who is 5'4" and now about 140 pounds, is a danger to everybody. You know, he's practically Hannibal Lecter. Practically Hannibal Lecter. So how, if he'd been getting on fine for the months he was in solitary confinement, how would he manage to get in a state like this? Because how do you lose a third of your body weight in that little amount of time unless you're not eating or you're very, very, very unwell? How? 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 I mean, this was Richard Allen when he was arrested. You have to see me scrolling again. All right, this was Richard Allen when he was arrested. So you can see, obviously, it's only head and shoulders, but you can see how much more weight he had on him compared to this photo. I might have another one. this time as well. Yeah, okay, this one. That one was from around the same time as well. So you can see the difference. You can see the difference between his weight when he was first arrested versus April of 2023. So in 4 months, he's gone from that to that. But yet he'd been getting on great. So I don't know, maybe he put himself on a diet or something. Is that what we're being led to believe now? In early April 2023, corresponding with these events, Alan's mental health quickly deteriorated. Alan started to refuse meals and act out. So they're saying that he only started to refuse meals in April of 2023. So how had he lost a third of his body weight by April of 2023? If he'd only started to refuse meals in April of 2023, how had he had such rapid weight loss in the 4 months previous? That doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, that does not make sense. The next day, oh, hold on. On April 3rd, Alan told his wife, I did it. I killed Abby and Libby. The next day, Dr. Waller upgraded Alan back to constant suicide watch. Correctional officers were assigned to observe Alan, and Dr. Waller met with him every day. So I was right. It was. Once he started going downhill and like into this psychotic state and making all these confessions, the suicide companions were let go, and it was corrections officers who were assigned to him. And Dr. Waller met with him every day. Yeah, because he's confessing, so let's get everything written down. On April 5th, Alan confessed to Dr. Waller and in a written note to the warden that he had killed Libby and Abby. He told Dr. Waller he acted alone and his intentions were sexual in nature. Yeah, that's bollocks as well. Although Warden Gallipo testified he was given the note on March the 5th, the suicide companion's testimony and log and the DOC chain of custody form show Alan delivered the note on April the 5th. So Gallipo doesn't even know what month it is. Okay. So why at this point, then, if he wants to confess, why at this point did he not request a new arraignment so that he could plead guilty, like formally? Why did he not request that? Is there any evidence that he requested a change of plea? Why did they not, at this point, get him on tape? You know, get him into a room and get him on tape confessing everything on tape that they could show the world. Instead, we've got these psychotic ramblings, because as well as confessing to killing Abby and Libby, he also confessed to killing his entire family, including the grandchildren that he didn't even have. He confessed to starting World War III, which arguably is going to happen, but I don't think it's Michelle that's going to cause it. He also confessed to cheating on his wife with his cigarette. So, yeah. Yeah. Dr. Waller warned Alan again that it was not in his best interest to talk about his case. 2 days later, on April the 7th, Alan said he killed Abby and Libby by himself and that he was just acting like he was crazy. So they're eating your own shit and banging your head against the wall to make your eyes like absolutely black and swollen. That's just acting like you're crazy. Cool. On April 8th, 9th and 10th, Alan made statements that he killed the girls and expressed remorse. During the ensuing days, Alan's behaviour became increasingly bizarre, including drinking toilet water, smearing feces on himself and in his cell, and eating his own feces. But nobody stopped him, nobody intervened. Alan shifted quickly back to normal behaviour. If he wanted something. So you eat your own shit until you want something. You don't say, it's not bullocks, it's bollocks. You don't say bollocks in the US either. We say bullshit. It is bullshit. We say bullshit here as well. We don't say bollocks in Canada. It's a British thing. I think it is a British thing. But it can be used interchangeably with bullshit. But it's not bullocks as in a young bull. It's bollocks as in testicles. I could say, oh, testicles. Where were we? All right. Or he would behave outrageously to get attention. Okay. By April 13th, Alan's behaviour was deemed severe enough to warrant medical intervention. So the next paragraph, we're now taking this seriously. So he's not just doing it for attention or just switching back to normal when he wants something. No, we're now saying that he is seriously mentally ill. Okay. The next day, Dr. Martin presented Alan's case to a treatment review committee, which agreed that Alan was exhibiting psychotic symptoms. So he was genuine, not just making it up for attention or because he wanted to confess and then pretend to act crazy so that, I don't know what, no one will believe him. I have no idea. I have no idea. Psychosis ebbs and flows, and a person can slip in and out of psychosis in a 24-hour period. That is true. But you can't just say in the paragraph previous that he shifted quickly back to normal if he wanted something. Yes, he can behave normally at certain points and then slip back into psychosis backwards and forwards because that's how psychosis works. So you can absolutely be psychotic 1 minute and then be able to hold a normal conversation the next. It doesn't mean that you're faking the symptoms. It doesn't mean that you're doing it voluntarily. That's how psychosis happens. Alan was administered an injection of short-acting Haldol for 4 days and monitored for side effects. He received long-acting Haldol injections on April 18th, May 18th, and June 16th. Between April 14th and May 2nd, Alan's psychosis symptoms slowly improved. He continued to confess during that period, including an admission on April 29th that he had used a box cutter he stole from CVS to kill Abby and Libby. By May 2nd and May 3rd, he had returned to baseline and no longer exhibited any symptoms of psychosis. Okay, well, I'm wondering why, therefore, Dr. Waller wrote in her notes this. So we'll start here. April 20th, Dr. Waller notes disjointed thoughts, still going downhill, has conversation related to competency to stand trial. 423. Inmate suicide companions are replaced with DOC guards. So there we go. These are in the notes. These are in the notes from the psychologist. So suicide companions had not been let go until towards the end of April. So it wasn't taken off suicide watch and the suicide companions let go. He continued to have the suicide companions until they were replaced by the guards. And that didn't happen until the 23rd of April, according to Dr. Waller's notes. And then on 5-3, tells Dr. Waller, I want to confess. 5-9, first incident of guards tasing his hands. 5-17, Dr. Waller notes disorganized thinking accelerated, i.e. getting worse. But yet this document wants us to believe that by May 2nd and May 3rd, he had returned to baseline and no longer exhibited any significant psychosis. Well, how did then Dr. Waller say that on 5-17, so the 17th of May, that he had disorganized thinking that had accelerated? On 5-18, Dr. Waller notes that he was in a vegetative state of depression. 5-22, Dr. Waller notes he's having a psychotic reaction to stress. But yet, in this document, which has been filed with the appeals court, says that he had returned to baseline and no longer exhibited any significant psychosis. So if he'd returned to baseline, then what you're going to try and tell me is that his baseline was a vegetative state of depression with disorganized thinking. Because according to this appeals brief here, he was already back to baseline. He was already back to baseline by 5-3. So the baseline was vegetative state of depression, but yet he didn't have serious mental illness to warrant the code kicking in that you could only stay in one of those suicide cells for 30 days. They are lying. They are lying. They are lying. 5-23, second incident of guards tasing his hands. Then in June, Dr. Waller notes depression peaked, physiological symptoms presenting, trembling, stuttering, knee buckling, and eyes bulging. So that's what he was doing in June of 2023. This was the same month they had the safekeeping hearing when Gould refused to move him from Westville. In July, Dr. Waller notes some signs of restoration. So between the beginning of April and July, he was in either psychosis or vegetative state depression. But guess what? Once he did start to recover somewhat, guess what? He stopped confessing. The confessions are absolutely correlated to the period of vegetation and psychosis. Unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. They are lying. They are changing, they are literally changing history to suit themselves. They are lying. On May 3rd, Alan gave his most detailed confession to the offences to Dr. Waller. So this was the time when the psychosis was about to peak. This was literally in the same time frame that his psychosis was getting worse. So it'd be incredibly easy to suggest things to. This was the first time that he mentioned that seeing a van was what scared him and caused him to forego raping the girls. This new piece of information that a van had driven by, which only Bridge Guy would know, led investigators back to Brad Webber. Which only Bridge Guy would know? Well, how come I knew about the van? How come I knew about it? I live 4,000 miles away, and I wasn't there in Indiana on February 13th, 2017. I don't know if I could provide an alibi to the state of Indiana if they decide to come after me, but I know I wasn't there. You've got to believe me, I wasn't there. But I knew about the van, as did many people who followed the case in the early days. Why? Because Brad Webber talked about it. Brad Webber and his mother talked about it, like when he got home. And everybody knew he drove a van. So the way to get to his home is by passing by the Mourning High Bridge Trail. Like you go under the bridge. So I knew about the van. This is certainly not a detail that only Bridge Guy would know. Because any Delphi fangirl like Dr. Waller, I'm quite sure would have come across it in the Delphi groups, and there's many of them. Facebook, Reddit, they're all over the place. So no, this is not a detail that only Bridge Guy would know. It's a detail that only people interested in the case would know. You know, because it wasn't like released in the media or anything like that. But if you followed the case on social media and you followed it well, you knew about that van. Dr. Waller would have known about that van. She is an evil witch. I think she put ideas in his head. She could have made this entire thing up. We don't know that Richard Allen said this. Why? Because even though he was filmed 24/7 in his cell, the only times he wasn't filmed was when he met with Dr. Waller outside of his cell. So the only time in this entire ordeal he wasn't filmed was when he made this major confession. And Dr. Waller didn't keep her notes. She destroyed the notes that she was taking of each session. So we have no proof whatsoever other than Dr. Waller's word that Rick Allen even made this confession. That is absolutely astonishing. He'd now be confessing for a month, and nobody had bothered to get these confessions in a formal way on tape. No, sitting him down in a controlled environment where they could ask him questions, where he could actually confess, sign a formal confession, and then be rearranged to plead guilty. That's how it should have worked. But no, there was no change of plea. There was no formal confession. There is no evidence anywhere of Rick Allen making this statement about Brad Webber's van from his own mouth. We have to believe Dr. Waller, and she is lying. Webber's work record showed that he first clocked out of the Subaru plant in Lafayette at 2:02 p.m. on February 13th. Webber confirmed that he had driven his van to work that day and went straight home, which would have placed the van on his driveway near High Bridge and the creek shortly after the girls were kidnapped. Except when you look at the distance between his home and the Subaru plant at Lafayette, you really have to drive fast. You have to really put your foot down to get there by 2:30. And in fact, what we see on the camera that caught him arriving home is that he was arriving home, or at least passing that camera, at 2:45, which is more appropriate, a more appropriate time for him to have got from clocking out at 2:02 to getting to the road that goes to his house at 2:45. That it does make more sense. Because you're not, when you clock out, it's not like you set off straight away, is it? Like you've got to clock out, then you've got to walk out of the building and then go to your car. So you've got a couple of minutes ticking down there, at least a couple of minutes ticking down there. Then you've got to go through, you know, traffic, and unless you're driving like a complete maniac, no, you're not going to arrive there any earlier than 2:45. So he gets to his house maybe a couple of minutes after that, and then his phone pings on the tower in Delphi at 2:50. It all makes sense, except they have rearranged this timeline to suit them. Alan continued to fess many more times to Dr. Waller, watch companions and his family through May and June, and even as late as February 2024. I haven't seen any evidence of him confessing in February 2024. I would like to know where that came from, because that's the first time I've heard that he confessed in February of 2024. I don't know if any of you guys have remembered him confessing in February 2024, but I certainly don't. I certainly don't. Yeah, hire Alan Jackson and Bob Alessi. Yeah. Oh, God, he does. He does. He needs a pair of pit bulls who'll take the state of Indiana by the throat and not release them until all this is over. Yeah, Alan Jackson and Bob Alessi. Yeah, the dream team back in action. And Yannetti as well. I really like David Yannetti because he's a very different kind of character, but he has this way to cut through bullshit. So we need the dream team back together to fight Rick Allen, not fight Rick Allen, fight the state of Indiana, fight the state of Indiana for Rick Allen. Oh dear. All right. I've not got very far through this document, have I? I knew it was going to take me forever. Additional facts will be provided as necessary to the issues. Cool. Summary of the argument. Okay. How long is this? I might end up... Okay. I'm going to read summary of the argument, and then I'm going to call it a day, and then come back tomorrow and do part 2. I might even have to do a part 3 because it's take me forever to go through this. It's just so infuriating. Yeah, I'll do a part 2. I'm going to do a part 2 tomorrow. Okay. Summary of the argument. Alan Frank's claim is waived in several respects, and it is meritless. So the Franks was the request to get the search warrant, the original search warrant, thrown out, but it was declined. So there was 136-page Franks 1, and then I think there was 3 more Franks documents, and all of them were declined. Liggett did not include false statements or omit material information from the probable cause affidavit. Well, he did. He absolutely did. He absolutely did. Dear God. He absolutely did. The affidavit still establishes probable cause, even if the challenge statements omissions are excluded or included. All right, so in the probable cause affidavit, Liggett wrote that Betsy Blair saw Bridge Guy, and that, and in all implying, it was all implicit, all implying that Bridge Guy was Richard Allen. So he admitted that Betsy Blair actually saw a young guy with dark poofy hair. she saw not a black Ford Focus. She saw a car that looked like her dad's old 1965 Mercury Comet, which are very different than a 2016 Ford Focus. And she also said it wasn't black. So Betsy Blair's out. Sarah Carbo originally said she saw a man with a tan coat, and she never mentioned never mentioned bloody initially, just muddy. So her testimony's out. The girls who provided evidence, I don't know whether we could keep those in, because they certainly didn't describe Rick Allen. Never mentioned his very small stature for a guy, and all gave different witness accounts of what he was wearing. So they're a big question mark. Like, did they see Rick Allen or not? Did they see him leaving? We don't know. I'm going to put a question mark on that. The ballistics, the unfired round, well, we're going to exclude that because, mind you, that wasn't, yeah, we are going to exclude that. We're going to exclude that as well, because Melissa Oberg did not compare apples with apples. She compared apples with a whole fruit salad by only being able to get marks on the shell casing that matched the marks on the unfired round that was found at the scene by actually firing rounds from Rick Allen's gun. So you're comparing apples with the whole fruit salad. You're not comparing like with like. So we've got to throw that out as well. So what else is left? There is literally nothing else left, because there's no forensic evidence that links Richard Allen to that crime scene or to those victims. There's no DNA. There's no evidence of his phone being there. Like, it's very suspicious that the geofencing that the FBI did was not allowed as evidence in court. Why did Nick McClellan want the geofencing evidence removed from the trial? They weren't allowed to present the geofence evidence. Why? I'm going to say because Rick Allen's phone was not in the vicinity at the time that the girls were murdered. Could have turned his phone off? Sure. But what if Rick Allen's phone was there, but then left? Was that ever tested? Was that ever tested? So there's no cell phone evidence. The evidence of his car passing the Who's Your Harvey store camera at 1:27 is questionable, because we've no actual proof that was his car. So we've got a questionable car, and we've got a questionable description from the girls, from Rayleigh and Brianne. So, okay, we'll keep those in. Is that enough? Like, the girls maybe seeing someone who could be Rick Allen, and his car that could have passed by. Remember, this is on the road. This is not on a trail. So we've got no evidence whatsoever. We've got no forensics. We've got no hairs. We've got no fingerprints. We've got no DNA. We've got no cell phone data. We've got nothing to link him to that crime scene or those victims. So Richard Allen is in prison for 130 years based on literally nothing. And here we are. Here we are. My chair is squeaking really bad. I'm going to have to get some WD-40 on it. Oh, Cassie's come in. I've done my 2 hours. Cassie always comes in. If I'm live, she comes in just before the 2-hour mark. She tells me I've had enough screen time. She's my screen time monitor. You know what Cassie does when I've been on my laptop too long? And if she can get to it, she slams my laptop lid down. She slams it down, and if I put it back up, she puts a pause on it to keep it down. She monitors my screen time very carefully. It's so annoying. She can't get to it right now because it's on her desk. I mean, she could jump up, but she's not going to do that. But she's here now judging me. She's judging me silently from my side. Her eyes are boring into me. But I am going to read this section and then I'm going to go. Okay. Alan's challenge to his confession is waived. Regardless, his confessions were voluntary. Okay. Whilst under a period of psychosis, yeah, they were voluntary, but were they admissible is another question. Should they have been admitted into the trial? I argue not, because he was very, very mentally unwell. The conditions of his confinement did not rise to the level necessary to constitute coercion. I don't know what they rose to then. Alan also had not shown that the conditions caused his confessions, as the record provides other explanations for his desire to confess. And he confessed both before and after his period of psychosis, not according to Dr. Waller's notes about Richard Allen's state of mind in April through July. Nothing. Kimberly, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. Thank you. Let's see who gets them. BCTV. Tracy, Kimmy, Eric, and Tropicana. Welcome. If you've never been a member before, go and check out the members area. We've got all sorts of stuff in there. Okay. Alan's other state constitutional challenges are meritless. Alan's challenge to the exclusion of the iPass settlement at the suppression hearing is moot, and he has not raised any challenge to its exclusion at trial. Okay. Regardless, Alan was allowed to present evidence of DOC policy regarding SMI, so serious mental illness, prisoners in restricted housing, and any minimal probative value of the settlement agreement from an earlier unrelated lawsuit was outweighed by the danger of prejudice and confusion to the issues. Its conclusion is at most harmless error. That's completely irrelevant. I don't know why they've even included that. The trial court properly excluded inadmissible evidence. Okay. Blair's investigatory sketch. Oh, investigatory sketch. Yeah, of a young man with poofy hair. Yeah, that's why it needed to be excluded. Was not relevant because she did not identify Alan. Oh, yes, she didn't identify Alan. She didn't identify Alan. That's exactly why the defense should have been allowed to question her about it and show the jury that sketch. That's exactly the issue. She didn't identify Rick Allen because it wasn't Rick Allen that she saw. Why are the defense not allowed to say that at trial? That's it. It's insane. It was unduly prejudicial. And it was inadmissible hearsay. No, it's not a hearsay. It's the sketch that she sat down with a forensic sketch artist within days of the murders. And she said, this is absolutely 10 out of 10, the guy I saw. That's not hearsay. If she's allowed to be called by the defense and for her to talk through how that sketch was derived. That's not hearsay. That's coming from the person's own mouth. They could get the sketch artist to come on and say, yeah, I'm the person who drew that sketch. And Betsy Blair was with me at the time. So you get the sketch artist to say, yes, this is my sketch. All right. So you've got then that link. And then you bring Betsy on. And she says, yes, I was the person who sat with the sketch artist, and that's his sketch, and it's 10 out of 10. That's not hearsay. I'm sorry, that's not hearsay. Nothing hearsay about that. Unduly prejudicial, yeah, to the prosecution, but a really important point for the defense, because they are admitting that she don't identify Richard Allen. She didn't, because she didn't see Richard Allen. She didn't see him. Tobin's testimony was not relevant because it went to the admissibility of firearms identification evidence as a science, not to witness credibility. This is the ballistics expert that the defense wanted to call. That wasn't allowed. And firearms identification evidence is admissible in Indiana. The audio of Allen's movement videos was hearsay. The audio of Allen's movement videos was hearsay. I don't even know what that is. His 2 jail calls on April the 3rd, 2023 did not fall under the doctrine of completeness. Dr. Grassian's opinion that Allen's confessions were false was impermissible vouching evidence. Permiter's third-party motive testimony, so she's the organism expert, that this was a ritual killing was properly excluded under Evidence Rule 403. It was impermissibly speculative, unsupported by any ordinist who could be connected to the crimes. Yeah, but just because you can't directly link people like Brad Holder or Patrick Westfall or Elvis Fields to the crime scene, maybe you could have done if they'd been properly investigated at the time, but they weren't. You could still look at that crime scene and say, these are signs of a ritualistic killing, even if you can't name any suspects to link them to that crime scene. You can still say, this to me, in my expert opinion, looks like a ritualistic crime scene. So that's absolute bullshit. That's just absolute, complete, total tripe. This is just codswallop. Is that a term that people use in other countries? I don't know. It's a very British term, codswallop. I don't even know what it means. Codswallop. And based on inaccurate or highly disputed contentions about the crime scene, except the FBI's own behavioural analysis unit said that this looked like a ritualistic killing. The FBI's behavioural analysis unit said it. Dear God. Allen's proffered third-party suspects were unduly speculative and did not tend to show Allen had not committed the murders. What do you mean, did not tend to show? That's a bit speculative, if anything. Holder had a confirmed alibi, making it impossible for him to have committed the crimes. I don't know that he had a confirmed alibi, just because it looked like he was clocked into work. Allen never contended that Westfall, whose sole alleged connection to the crimes was his organism, could have committed the crimes by himself. Yeah, no one was suggesting that Patrick Westfall committed the crimes by himself, but he could have committed the crime. He could have committed the crimes by himself. Doesn't look like Bridge Guy because he's tall. I think Westfall's about 6'4", but he could have been there, and he didn't have an alibi. He didn't have an alibi on that day. His alibi, allegedly, was his son. But then his son, when he was questioned, said he was at school. So who knows? Any error in the exclusion of this evidence is... And also, this is assuming that the crimes took place, that the girls were dead by 2:32. Because if the crimes actually took place later... then Brad Holder could have been there. He could have gone from Logansport to Delphi and got there a little bit later. We don't know if one or both of the girls were killed before 2:32. We don't know that. There was no time of death recorded anywhere in the trial testimony. Nowhere has it been said, based on the girls' bodies, an approximate time they died. They're just going from Libby's phone, not moving from 2:32. But we don't know that is the point where they were dead. So you can't exclude Holder because he was at work, even if he was at work at 2:32. And you absolutely cannot exclude Westfall just because it's not contended that he could have committed the crime on his own. He could have done, but he doesn't look like Bridge Guy. Any error in the exclusion of any of this evidence was harmless beyond a reasonable doubt, based on the eyewitness testimony and Alan's statement placing him at the scene, which combined to identify Alan as Bridge Guy. Alan never said that he went to the south side of the bridge. He said he went on the first platform, which is at the north end, to look at the creek and watch the fish. He never said he went to the south end. So there's that. The presence of a 40 caliber cartridge cycled through his gun at the scene, well, no, there's no proof that it actually cycled through his gun, and his numerous confessions, which were all committed under very serious mental illness. The admission of the Google search for an alternate theory explaining the cell phone's audio output code was harmless error. Was it really? None of the theories that the code made it more or less likely for Alan to have killed the victims. How is that harmless error? Because the Google search that was made by Chris Cecil, which should not have been allowed in the trial. You just do a random Google search in the middle of your testimony to say, oh, the phone could have registered headphones being plugged in at 5:45 and taken out at whatever it was, something past 10:32. It could have been water damage, or it could have been fluff in the output, the auxiliary port. He Googled that. He didn't know. He Googled it. Dear God. The trial court properly denied Alan's motion to correct error. Alan did not show that the state offered demonstrably false testimony because he did not verify the date and timestamp on the surveillance video, nor did he establish a foundation for the FBI ping evidence. You would think the FBI ping evidence, so the geofencing, would have been offered by the prosecution. You would think, unless they're trying to conceal something. Alan had an adequate opportunity to impeach the witness with this evidence, but he strategically chose not to. I don't know what witness he's talking about here. Last, this evidence would not have impeached Alan's confession to seeing the van. Oh, I know what. This is the ping on Webber's phone. So the 250. Did not establish a foundation for the FBI ping evidence. Well, the evidence is clear. His phone pinged at 2:50 when he got home. How do you need to provide a foundation for that? Because it's like dirt. Last, this evidence would not have impeached Alan's confession to seeing the van. Yeah, but the girls were already dead. And by over the other side of the creek, by the time the van passed by. So it's the confession doesn't make sense. The van passed by at 2:45. Brad Webber got home about 2:50. But yet the girls, according to the state's evidence, the state's theory, were dead by 2:32. But yet in Rick Allen's confession, he said that he was scared by the van. Well, the girls were already dead. They'd already been dead, 13 minutes by the time Brad Webber's van even was caught on the camera. And they'd been dead for nearly 20 minutes by the time his phone pinged at his house. So Rick Allen's confession makes no sense based on the evidence presented at the trial, or based on the evidence that should have been presented at the trial. And yeah, it's true. The defense did error. They did error. That they could have impeached Brad Weber by presenting the, that only came out after the trial. That the van passed by at 2:45 and the FBI's ping evidence of 2:50. So that is right. They could have used that at the trial to impeach Brad Weber, but they didn't. Now, maybe they didn't see it. I don't know. But it's unfortunate that they didn't. This evidence would not have impeached Alan's confession to seeing the van. Well, it would have. It would have. It would have. I mean, yeah, the defense had the opportunity to impeach Brad Weber by showing him the CCTV and showing him the FBI report of when he got home. But it would have been something for the jury to decide as to whether they believe the time on the CCTV and the FBI's ping evidence, or they believe Brad Weber, or they believe Rick's confession. But that should have been up for the jury to deliberate, and it wasn't, because the defense didn't present it, which is unfortunate, really unfortunate. This court should affirm Alan's murder convictions. Okay, so it goes into a lot more detail in this argument with the legal stuff. So we're going to do that tomorrow. So we're going to start on page 28 tomorrow. We've not got very far. We've really not got very far, but that's all right. That's all right. So thank you all for joining me. I know it's an inappropriate time for most people. I'll be back tomorrow morning, my time. If you're watching this on the replay, thank you for getting to the end. And thank you to those who've been members for a long time. Mandy, 40 months. Paper Chaser, 41 months. And Kimberly for gifting 5 memberships. Thank you all. Thanks as always to the mods. And I shall see you same time tomorrow. Bye, guys.